Something changed in American homes after World War II. Not just what we cooked, but how we lived. Because for the first time in years, people had time again. For nearly a century, the Sunbeam Mixmaster has been one of the most recognizable machines in the American kitchen. Millions were made, in dozens of models, across several decades. Many were wedding gifts. Some came from your grandmother's kitchen. Yours may have come from your mom. But whether your Mixmaster is a flea market find or a fully restored treasure from AuntieNin.com, this series will help you figure out exactly what you have. Because every Mixmaster has a story. The Sunbeam Mixmaster had already proven itself before the war. The Model 7, solid, capable, dependable, carried the brand through the late 1930s and into wartime America. But during the war, production slowed. Materials were redirected, factories shifted focus. And like so many things in American life, the Mixmaster didn't disappear, but it had to wait. When the war ended, everything changed. America wasn't just rebuilding, it was redefining itself. Families came home, homes filled back up, and the kitchen, once again, became the center of it all. And Sunbeam was ready, not with a completely new idea, but with a refined one, the Model 10. For the first time, Sunbeam gives its primary mixer an even number, one of the most successful mixers Sunbeam would ever produce. And for many people, this is the Mixmaster. And you can see it immediately. The machine looks different, more confident, more deliberate, more American. But the Model 10 didn't just look different, it worked differently. Up to this point, if you wanted to change bowl position in a Mixmaster, you had to do it manually. You'd move the bowl, lift the turntable out of its mounting hole, and move it over, and then set it back down into a different position. It worked, but it wasn't exactly convenient. And by the 1950s, that kind of interaction was starting to feel outdated, because this was the era of ease, the era of push a button, flip a switch, make it simple. So Sunbeam refined the system. They redesigned how the bowl sat on the turntable, making it more stable. And then they added something new, a lever on the back of the machine. Now, instead of moving anything, you could just shift the mixer itself, side to side, with a single motion. 2 bowl sizes, 1 machine, no disassembly required. It's a small change, but it tells you exactly where things were headed, because the Mixmaster wasn't just expected to work anymore, it was expected to be easy. And that change created something you don't often see in a product like this, a clean break. From the very beginning, all the way through the alphabet models and the single-digit machines, Sunbeam used one bowl system, what collectors now call the Dimple bottom bowls. These bowls were universal. You could move them from one machine to another as long as you stayed within that generation. But with the Model 10, that changed. From this point forward, Sunbeam introduced a new system, ridge bottom bowls. And just like before, they were universal within their own group. But the two systems don't cross. Earlier bowls don't work on the newer machines, and the newer bowls won't work on the older ones. 2 complete systems. And this is the only time Sunbeam makes that kind of a break. Everything before Model 10, one standard. Everything after, another. If you're trying to match bowls to a machine, this is the line that matters. And it's not just history. That second system stayed in use long enough that replacement bowls are still being made by third parties today. By the late 1940s, design in America was being influenced by something else entirely, the automobile. Companies like Packard and Hudson weren't just building cars, they were defining style. Long lines, refined surfaces, subtle confidence instead of decoration. And the Mixmaster followed that lead. Gone were the smaller, busier details of earlier models. In their place, a clear front, a stronger presence, and that grille. 6 larger openings instead of 12 smaller ones. Fewer details, stronger presence. And inside the Model 10 was a 120-watt motor. And this time, Sunbeam made sure you knew it. Now, this wasn't the first time wattage had appeared on a Mixmaster. If you go back to the early alphabet models, that number was right there on the front of the motor. Because in the 1930s, those weren't appliances, they were machines, and machines spoke a very different language: power, output, capacity. Wattage wasn't a selling point, it was simply a fact. But then something changed. As design moved into the streamline era, the Mixmaster stopped needing to explain itself. It had already earned trust. By the time you reached the Model 7, power was assumed, reliability was expected, and the person using the machine was no longer being asked to think like an engineer. She didn't need numbers, she needed results. Something that worked, something refined, something easy. And for a time, that was enough. But after the war, the ground shifted again. America didn't just want things that worked, they want things that were better, faster, stronger, more efficient, and increasingly, that conversation was being shaped by something outside the factory. Not the engineer, but the storyteller. The one who could take something measurable, like 120 watts, and turn it into something meaningful, something desirable, so that when Sunbeam puts that number right on the bottom of the Model 10, it's not just information, it's positioning. Because numbers feel objective, even when they're being used to sell. And in a market where other manufacturers were beginning to introduce their own machines with their own ideas and their own versions added to the mix, that number mattered. This is the era most people remember: the I Love Lucy kitchen. Bright, ordered, optimistic, a place where life happened again. Birthdays mattered again. Holidays felt full again, and celebration returned. And the Mixmaster was right there in the middle of it. Not as a luxury, not as a novelty, but as part of the kitchen. Light cakes, fluffy frostings, perfect consistency every time. Things that, not long before, required time, strength, and experience. Now they're accessible. And that's really the shift. The Mixmaster didn't just survive the war, it came out of it perfectly positioned for a country that was ready to live again. And in kitchens across America, it went to work. In the next episode, we'll watch the Mixmaster begin to change again. Not just in how it works, but in how it looks. Because for the first time, style starts to take the lead.